Special edition of the Public Works Subcommittee of Solid Waste. Yeah, the matinee. Yeah, that's right. There was no discount on tickets, though, however. So we have a abbreviated agenda. We are trying to get this meeting in before budget meets today. And so we have no real reports other than, Bishop, you've got a presentation you'd like to give, right? So I'm going to go ahead and bring you up, and you want to get that taken care of and out of the way before we get into general discussion? Okay, so Bishop Wagner. I don't think we have any meetings or meeting minutes to approve, do we?
From last month.
We do? Okay, all right.
Because this is technically the July.
Okay, so technically the July meeting. Technically, I will call on Vice Chair Steve Piercy to talk about the review of those minutes.
Chairman Cush, I have reviewed the minutes and I find them to be in order and would move for their approval.
All right. We have minutes reviewed and a motion to approve. I need a second. Second by Blair. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. That motion carries. All right. Thank you. Is our business out of the way, Rachel? Thank you. Steve? I mean, not Steve. Bishop, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for gathering here today. The first item that I have is a point of housekeeping. We received a letter from TDEC. It is the annual inflation adjustment on the financial assurance for Rutherford County landfills for both our Class 3 and our Class 1 landfill. It is in your iPads. It appears that there will be an inflation adjustment increase of $29,742.18 for the Class 3 landfill, and an inflation allowable reduction of $75,552.79 for the Class 1 landfill.
So, Bishop, what does that mean?
They adjust the inflation yearly on how they treat the post-closure cost estimates. Okay. So in order for us to keep current with what we need to have.
Okay. Does that conclude that particular?
It will require a signature, the mayor's signature after a vote.
Okay, so we will need a motion and be on the roll for that, since we're ultimately going to spend an extra $10,000. All right. We need a motion for that approval and a second. It sounds like, it's going to be a cost increase to us due to inflation of what looks like $10,000. Is that right, Bishop?
It'll be a net reduction by approximately $30,000 and some change, because they're adjusting, they're reducing by $75,000 on the Class 1, and they're increasing by $29,000 on the Class 3.
So it's a reduction.
An overall reduction.
And is it correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just trying to go back in memory, is this similar to bonding capacity or warranty capacity? So it's not an actual check we're cutting, but we have to warrant that we will cover an estimated cost that it changes every year based on
That's correct.
inflation and how much time we've had. So our policy limits may grow or shrink. So it's not a dollar.
It's a way, it's in lieu of a performance bond. Yeah.
So I make a motion that we accept the inflation report submitted by TDEC regarding the groundwater assessment monitoring.
We have a motion. We need a second. All right.
Need to call.
Well, let's still be on roll. The word inflation made me think we were going to be paying more. But
I said TDEC, it was triad. I may have missed.
all right. Let's go on the board.
Commissioner Blair,
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris. Yes. Commissioner Piercy,
Yes.
Commissioner P. Commissioner Sereno,
Yes.
Chairman Kush.
Yes. All right, what else you have, Bishop?
Okay, next I have a short presentation that will hopefully address some of the questions that were brought up and the current state of things that were brought up in the June 6th meeting. I apologize for my absence, and hopefully this will address some of those questions and concerns. So the first thing, and if I can figure out how to work this first time. So what I'm going to talk about briefly are what I'm calling the county hours agreement that was reached with the county and Middle Point Landfill to try to help us. I want to introduce you to some staff member who's been very pivotal in us being able to work through some of the stuff we've been dealing with here. We're going to talk about the weekend convenience center services. There's some stuff in here from Rebecca Caldwell, and we'll open it up to reclamation discussion. And then I have the groundwater report for the first quarter from Triad Environmental. So the first thing is this Middle Point cooperation discussion. I'd like to say that I met on June 10th with Mike Clausen. We'd been dealing with very high volumes, some real issues with being able to get our containers cleaned out, which was affecting especially hard our open top container management ability. So I went to his office on Friday afternoon, and we had a long discussion, and he offered to provide special operational hours for Rutherford County only. So these hours are Mondays. We have the landfill all to ourselves for just our trucks from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m., and he's allowed us to have the landfill on Monday afternoons from 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. This is uninhibited travel. It's just us going through the gates, going over the scales, and it's really allowed us. This is on Mondays and Thursdays, which are our days when our convenience centers are closed, which are our clean out days. So it's really allowed us to keep containers clean off the hill yard and get caught up. He's also, and I've included an email that he sent, and I won't go into detail about reading it all the way through, but he's itemized several things that they're working on and some timelines that they're working on with equipment and trying to better manage their landfill and the way that it operates. And I am happy to report that the landfill has been running really well for the last few weeks. I would say it's not to his optimal time. He's still working toward it, and he'd admit that, but it's been what I would consider to be very well, running very well in the 45-minute turn times during high volume, which is good, and that a lot of that is due to the fact that our trucks aren't bombarding the line trying to play catch up. If we get to a spot to where the lines are too long, we can set down on the hill yard, and then we've got that time that agreement that we have where it can be just us running to play catch up. And what that's done for us is, for example, we've been averaging prior to this agreement within my morning load counts to be in the hundreds, between I think we had a peak that was around 130, and then we were consistently over in the triple digit marks under 130. This morning, my load count was 25. So I just wanted to make sure to Sherry, I know that we are engaged in we work with the landfill on a regular basis, and there's a lot of noise going in both directions, but I like to draw attention to the fact that this has been a real positive with working with them lately, and I hope it continues. Are there any questions about this point that I've discussed?
With Bishop, without hearing from the audience, I would like to ask one question. Overall, how will this benefit the public that go to our convenience and recycle centers?
That's an excellent question. We can already tell when you go to a convenience center, the open tops are empty. You're able to dispose of bulk items. When we're at those high capacity levels in our convenience centers, and we're not able to service, because by state law, the municipal solid waste that's generated in the compactors, that has to be priority. I can't have that wet garbage sitting in there. So if we're running back and forth trying to play catch up with those, we fall behind on the open tops. Well, the open tops have been caught up. I mean, for most of the centers, they may have one or two that are full right now, and we're going into a cleanup day tomorrow, which is excellent. That's the way we want things to be. And yeah, so I anticipate that the service will continue in this direction. And I'm tickled to be having good news to be able to report to you when it comes to being able to serve the citizens.
One more question. These special hours from 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. and 4 to 6 on Mondays and Thursdays only, is that a temporary solution, a Band-Aid approach? What, is that a long-term sustainable deal, or is that just a stopgap until we have something better in place? And if so, what is that?
So we made the agreement based on, till September, based on the anticipation of high-capacity compactors and some of the other options that we've been working toward. The other thing is that the landfill and Mr. Clausen have been working on getting more equipment out there to be able to keep the material moving, to keep the lines moving, and we're seeing that equipment being there and those things happening now. So I think the overall goal is for all of us, as we're dealing with issues that, from equipment breakages, supply chain issues, driver shortages, all of those, if we work together on trying to overcome these, I'm thinking that we'll be able to move toward our goals of being sustainable here in this. We're going to reevaluate this periodically through this trial period and see what works and what doesn't. I've got an open channel of communication and speak with landfill manager Mr. Clausen regularly, and we'll continue to do so.
Any other questions?
One. The
Yes, sir.
gentleman you keep referring to, is that their new GM?
Mike Clausen has been the manager over there since 2018. They have a new operations person. I don't speak directly with him. I talk to the landfill manager.
All right, will you do us a favor next time you talk to Michael, and just state that on behalf of the Public Works Committee, we appreciate his desire to work with us on that. Yes, sir. Chairman
Can you
Harris.
explain, we have got some pictures went around about a fire.
Yes,
Can you
sir.
explain as to what happened in that, or just kind of let us know what's going on?
Well, I can, of course, I wasn't operating or managing on that, but I do know a little bit about fire, so if I'm not exactly on point with what happened, I do think I know what might have happened. From time to time, when you have a particularly wet load of garbage, especially if it's maybe set in a container for a period of time, it will get hot. It can combust when it gets released into an oxygen-rich environment. It was a surface fire that started on Sunday. I had trucks there at 3 a.m. on Monday morning. The fire was completely out. There was no evidence that there was anything ongoing or recurring. This is a pretty commonplace action that happens on landfills. It's unfortunate, but it's something that does happen. There are a couple other potential catalysts for it, but the end of the day is I feel confident that we're not harming anything by continuing to take garbage up there, and I believe that if anyone were to ask Mr. Clausen, he'd probably echo the same statement.
All right, continue on, Bishop.
All right. So the next thing I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce, come on up here, Matt, Mr. Matthew Davis. As you know, over the past couple of months with these load counts and with some of the changes that I've made up here in the department, I've had to rely and develop staff that I had here. And Matt, I wanted to introduce to you all as being someone who has gone above and beyond in every sense of the way. He jumped in and took over dispatch duties for me. This man has not had a complete day off since March. He comes in on his days off and works an hour or two to set up the dispatch for the drivers for the next day. And he has gained and earned my trust in all operational matters, and which is important. Something that I walked into, there was a single point of failure that was, everything had to be answered by one person when I walked into this position, and I am, I'm a human being. This is a tough job, and I need a break every once in a while, and I need somebody that I can rely on when I have to take those breaks. And Matt has proven that he's gonna be able to step up and do that. So you may see more. I want to bring him around more and show him more about what we do here as we go forward. And I wanted to take this opportunity to introduce him to you and to also kind of let you see an example of the quality of people that we have working in Rutherford County Solid Waste. They're really, this is a tough job, and they're really knocking it out of the park for the citizens. And I think in a lot of ways, with all of the situation as it's been, and a lot of unsatisfied citizens, rightly so, across the county for some of the stuff we've had to deal with, I just wanted to take an opportunity to acknowledge Matt in this way and introduce him to you.
Thank you, Matt.
So then the next topic from the discussion on the 6th was considering weekend service. So I wanted to bring this up because there was a little bit of confusion. At least there was confusion that I've been getting from the calls that have coming in from people that have watched that the as far as the bulk item, and this has not changed. I have not altered this since I've come into office from what it was previously, and I wanted to let you know that the bulk items was set up, I believe, around the time when COVID started to help to reduce the amount of volume that was getting brought to the centers. It has done that. The rate of volume increase that we've seen, I think, is based on the population. There's a lot of speculation on some of the other variables. Perhaps there are more people in the county working from home and generating more large waste, more people buying things online and replacing furniture and doing things like that, because we have seen an influx in mattresses have been out of the roof here lately, furniture, couches, sectionals. And on Sunday, when the landfill is closed, that we are limited to the containers that we can fill up. So what was happening and has happened is we fill up all the containers we have in the county, and then we can't change those containers out. So we're either forced to refuse service of bulk items at certain containers, and in worst case scenarios, we have to close the center altogether and send them on to another center. The last thing in the world I ever want to do is that. So that's what the Sunday closure is about. Now, there have been, in the not too distant past, like in the last month, 6 weeks, we've had volumes, like I'd said, with our load counts over, into the 130 range, where we were out of containers. So we'd do as much as we could to clean up on Thursday, but it just wasn't enough to sustain us through the entire weekend. And sometimes as early as Friday evening or early Saturday morning, we were finding centers that had every container that was full. And I've hired a couple new drivers. I've got one new driver that just started this week. I've got another driver that's going to come in on the 1st of July, and that'll help some. But it's just a volume generation versus ability to dispose. Back to the initial point, with good landfill times and with the way Middle Point's been working with us, we're able to keep up with some of that stuff and do a better job managing it. And that's what I hope to continue to try to do for you and the citizens. Are there any questions about the weekend service?
So we're not changing policy at this point. We're just trying to stay caught up.
We're just trying to stay caught up. This policy has been in effect, and until I feel confident that we can manage something without having to go through a period of closures or this again. I mean, nobody can predict a pandemic, of course, but within predictable means, that's what my goal is here, is to make sure that when we do make moves, they're not sudden and abrupt, they last.
The bulk items still are taken on Saturdays, right?
Yes. Bulk items are taken every day we're open except Sunday, and of course, we're closed on Mondays and Thursdays. And in the event that a convenience center does fill up, I've instructed my attendants and my drivers to notify the public of the next nearest convenience center that they can go if there are full containers at that center, because it does happen from time to time.
What else?
Okay, next, I have, we're discuss reclamation. I've included a letter which is an outline from Rebecca Caldwell of CES. Per your request, Rebecca had another appointment and wasn't going to be able to make it today, so she sent this on to me to present to you. And there are actually two documents that are with this. One of them is the reclamation outline, and there's also a fact sheet from the EPA on landfill reclamation. It's actually several sheets, but it's a paper that is in your iPads as well that talks about pros and cons of landfill reclamation and what we can do. I'm going to allow you to take a little bit of time to glance over this, and I'll answer and address any questions I can in lieu of Rebecca's absence.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Lloyd.
I read over this prior to coming in. The one thing that really stood out to me was that reclaiming one landfill could cause an adjacent landfill to collapse, or according to this paperwork. So I don't understand that being the case at all, but the EPA has put it out. So are they scotched up against each other? Is that, the way it's set up, would it cause an avalanche of solid waste to slide into the reclaimed landfill?
That's a very good question. The reality is that it is a possibility anytime that you're moving material that is, and in our case, we have a Class 1 and a Class 2 that are connected by, there is a valley in between that is causing some stability at the base of that slope. I'm not a civil engineer or a soils engineer, so I can't speak to, the limits that would be placed on our landfill in particular, but the EPA has identified it as a potential hazard to be looked at. There are several that I found were listed in that document that I think that would make a case to avoid that action. And then there are several that were in there that could make the case that reclamation may be somewhere that we want to go. But yeah, from the standpoint of if we're moving basically a mass of material away from a juxtaposed mass, the chances of there being a slump on that connecting zone is probably more increased than if we left them alone.
A rock and a hard place would be the EPA saying you have to reclaim this, but if we did reclaim it, it starts an avalanche from the mountain of solid waste that's already there. I think that's a whole different project than actually the reclamation is engineering to protect that mountain of solid waste from cascading down into the valley.
And I don't know if by mountain you're referring to Middle Point. I don't, because of there's quite a valley that separates in between those two. Of course, I'm not an engineer, but I was speaking of our Class 1 and our Class 3 if we were to because they are literally touching. So, but there is quite some space in between our landfills and Middle Point landfill. I think that would be, the way that it affects Middle Point landfill, I think would be negligible, if at all. I think some of the things that I would be more concerned about on a reclamation path would would lean toward, what are we going to find when we start digging into the landfill? You know, are there going to be things that the EPA has placed on hazard list that may have not been, they may have not had MCLs for whenever they were put in the earth, and we might have to deal with them in a more stringent environmental way. The worst case scenario is we run into something that we don't want to and can't dig up and can't move, and then we go into a total different style of post-closure activity that can cost the county a considerable amount of money.
I'm just curious. Okay, the problems that we're having with our landfill, where some of it's collapsing, okay, is that common? So my question is this, so we decide to go a different route. We don't want to deal with Republic. All right, we're going to go a different route. And they got 6 years of life left, right? So, but they had to maintain that for the next 30-some years. Is that correct?
30,
Okay.
maybe
Is
50.
it common, though, that landfill could potentially have stuff collapse like ours does?
So by collapse, if you're referring to subsidence or subsidence, that is common in every landfill. It's part of the landfill's, the way that a landfill devours itself and matures. And part of the post-closure activities and the requirements that are monitored by TDEC and by a lot smarter folks than I, they monitor the rate of that subsidence, the fluids that are coming out of that while it's going through that process, the gases that are out there, and they can anticipate. The plan is that they'll see before something slumps off, because I know we've had that happen on our landfill in the past where a part of the land slumped off and had to be repaired. I was notified by TDEC that was a repair that Mr. Nolan had done when he was in office. That happens from time to time too. If you control the rate at which, or work on controlling the rate at which the landfill starts to settle and subside, you can minimize the potential for there to be something that breaks open and releases either fluid or gas in large quantities.
So when our landfill collapses, does it let out an odor?
The class 3 does not. I couldn't tell you. I haven't seen the collapse with the class 1, and I've got an open face on the class 3. I don't smell anything in our landfill besides sulfur water.
So if Middle Point's landfill collapses, which you say is a common thing, is that, do you think odors would come out of that?
Well, collapses, subsides is the term. Collapse
However you want to put it.
Well, if it's monitored in a way that it's supposed to, as they know the rate of subsidence, so they cover it up with their materials and monitor that. That's the practice of operating a landfill, would be to try to control the gas that's getting emitted and pump out as much leachate as it's being generated to control the rate at which that comes, so that they can put their trucks with dirt or their temporary cover over whatever area that they feel it needs to be, or maybe they need to put some new pipe or something in there to make that gas, adjust the rate that gas comes out, or like, we're getting way outside of my ability when it comes to engineering, but from my knowledge of landfills, that's the goal with any landfill, is to control that rate of subsidence. You know, I can't sit here and say that any landfill couldn't have a catastrophic failure due to something. I mean, but, you know, from the studies that I've read, it's not super common, especially on landfills that are heavily monitored.
Well, what I'm trying to get at, Bishop, is I'm trying to understand something. So, say Middle Point closes in 6 years, all right? So, we cap it. All that they do what they're supposed to do. Is there a guarantee that we'll never smell that landfill again?
No.
Continue on, Bishop.
Okay. Are there any other questions about reclamation?
So, well, yeah, any questions before I butt in, as usual? One of the things that this body will have to decide, either before or after we go through with the RFP process that Becky's going to work on, is, either by consensus or wait to see what the prices are going to be, is do we want to touch it? Do we let a sleeping dog lie? Or as Bishop stated, when you open that thing up, you don't know what potential issues, liability, things we might find that could create a whole new set of problems and costs that would be associated with that. And then we'll, obviously, from an economic standpoint, RFP comes back with a number. Is that number compatible with what we would closure costs be, and then the leachate management for the next 30 years, or is it exponentially more than that? Those are the financial things we're going to have to weigh. And then, as she outlines as she outlines in the outline, prepare an RFP. We need to decide what we think we're going to do with the land. If it gets down to ground zero, what are we going to turn it into? Because the soil has to be prepared if it's going to be something usable, or if we're just going to set it aside, put grass seed on it, and maybe save it for a potential landfill site decades down the road. Or, we've all learned that whatever technology we go with, there is no such thing as 100%. At best, we're going to have to landfill at least 10% of something. So is that our site in the future? So those are the things we need to think about. So this outline throws back at us some questions that we need to ask ourselves what we need to do as she puts the final preparations on that. And you also notice in item 1, she's asked, are we just concerned about our class 1 or our class 1 and 3 landfill? Or are we just concerned about the one landfill that we've been talking about where the valley is? So those are some questions we have to ask. But you can see there is a huge process of engineering and marking what is there as a pre-construction, post-construction, and so forth. The other thing that I would be concerned about, and I don't know how you write this in a contract, or how you would put up a construction bond. You guys that are in the construction business would know. But how do you protect yourself if a contractor bids on this, starts and gets a third of the way into the landfill and hits something, or his costs are so unforeseen costs are so crazy, he just walks away and leaves us with an open pit of, EPA goo that they're on our case about? What do we then, what financially or legally, what can we do?
Could we not set a performance bond?
Yeah, but can you, that performance, how do you determine the price of a performance bond based on what could be a mini Superfund site? That's what I can't get through to my head is, how do you put a price on that, on the unknown? I don't know. We've drilled it, and it looks kind of benign, but boy, sure enough, you start digging in between drill holes and you get something glowing in the dark, then what do? I don't know. These are just things we've got to think about. So, anyhow. Well, it could, you never know. It could be Oak Ridge in there for all we know. So, yeah. All right, Bishop. What else do you have for us?
That's all I had on that. The next will bring me into the next point, which is the first quarter triad report, which I did include last for the 6th, on the June 6th meeting in the notes, but I wanted to bring up a summary in case you all hadn't had a chance to read it. And this is the monitoring that is done by Triad on our Class 1 landfill to discuss the air quality and the fluid that's in that. And I'm going to read this brief paragraph if I could. A release to groundwater from the facility was indicated by the results of the March 2022 monitoring event, which included SSIs for arsenic, cobalt, and nickel, and detections of VOCs, volatile organic compounds, in the samples from MW1. The concentrations of detected constituents are similar to recent findings. Consistent with historical results, an SSI for fluoride at several wells was identified, but this has been demonstrated to be a result of naturally occurring conditions. The type and concentration of organic and inorganic constituents detected indicates a likely source of the impact as landfill gas migration. As a result of these findings, assessment monitoring will continue at Rutherford County Landfill. Based on the results of this monitoring event, the groundwater monitoring system continues to perform as designed. So what this says in a nutshell is that the actual leachate and gas that are supposed to occur within the Class 1 landfill are behaving as expected, with the gas constituents as the microbes inside of the landfill break down all of the material, and the constituents that they're finding, arsenic, cobalt, and nickel, and some volatile organic compounds. They're common in the sample and haven't changed much since they started. Prior to me taking office, they had initiated a system for releasing of the gas where it's dissipated using these whirling, I'm not sure what the technical term is, I call them whirly birds. They sit on top of the landfill, and it's been working really well with the readings that they're getting on the outgassing from our landfill. So I wanted to make sure that was mentioned and addressed. But aside from that, are there any other questions for me?
Can you go back to that previous slide?
Yes, sir.
So that is the engineering summary. What's the plain English summary?
Plain English is that the Class 1 landfill is behaving as it has been behaving in a normal and consistent manner, and is consistent with what is expected within the Class 1 landfill. The rates of leachate generation are not increasing. The gassing is not increasing, and that's important to know as we go toward discussions about some of the incidents that are happening on our Class 3 landfill. I'd asked for Triad to have me something that I could present on the Class 3 landfill today. I wasn't able to get it in time, and I'll present it at the next Public Works meeting so that you have a little bit of information from them on what they found there.
So our methods of treatment will remain the same, or is there potential new methods of treatment that they may allow us to do?
The Class 3 is working, the Class 1 is working great. I mean, there's nothing else really. I mean, everything's pretty much self-contained and managed there. The issues that have been occurring on the Class 3 landfill, we're still working with Triad and TDEC to come up with a plan and a solution to be able to deal with that. And as soon as I get a solid recommendation from both of them on what they think is going to be the best, I'll bring it before committee and we can discuss it.
What else?
Now I'm back to questions again.
We have one.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Commissioner Harris's question about the fire, because you're my only source to Republic at this point, and the fire was at Republic. Did we have trouble? Did EMS have trouble gaining access? Who put it out? Did you pick up any facts about that?
I haven't heard anything negative about them being able to get up there and get the fire out. I know that there's been some online chatter about it, but from the people in the know that I've asked about it, it seemed like a pretty commonplace activity that was taken and handled well by our
Rutherford County, it would be a Rutherford County EMS response.
It was the folks down the bottom of the
Have you
hill.
heard from Chief Farley or any concerns?
There's some update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And of course, Chris Clark, our Director of EMA, anytime wreck, EMA, or he calls me on every issue, drowning at the lake, suicide, et cetera. This issue, he called me to let me know that the landfill was on fire. I think Pettis called and talked to Chief Farley, and he said, I've seen on Facebook that the landfill's on fire. And he said, can you see it from Rockville? And he was just joking, of course. But I think Republic or BFI responded quickly. From my understanding and talking to Chief Farley, I talked to both he and Chris. We were on standby. Of course, we have our Walter Hill Fire Department right there. They were on standby just to make sure that it did not escape. But Republic immediately got into action. They started bringing dirt in to smother it. You don't want to go up there and put water on it. We really didn't want to take our pumpers or our water tanks up there anyway because it might sink. So I think within 2 hours it was extinguished. It just was a hot load that came in on top. It was not, as Facebook was saying, it was from the aluminum dross dumped there years and years ago, deep down in the landfill. It was probably a hot load that came in, some charcoal briquettes or something that came in that somebody threw out that they thought that it was out, or it could have been a lithium battery that ignited. Things that should have been recycled instead of thrown away, but it just happens. None of our people, we were on standby just watching it closely.
Let's go back to the landfill, reclaiming the landfill. Okay, I've heard some stuff. What do you suggest?
I'm not really prepared to make a suggestion until I get a report back from Ms. Caldwell on what she thinks some of the costs involved in the reclamation process may be. Because there are benefits to both. I mean, having a landfill reclaimed and there not being anything to worry about, there's definitely benefit to that. But how is that going to be compared to the long-term costs of post-closure activities? Our landfill is relatively small, and closing it and monitoring it over a period of time, it should be fine. And there are many other landfills across the state that are. But then the other questions come into, do we have plans to reuse that land for something else in the future? And what are the cost benefits for that? So yeah, I would like to think more on this subject as being, I'd like to have some more numbers before I can make a real recommendation on what I'd like. And I'd like to hear some more information than just one pamphlet, one flyer from the EPA about recommendations when it comes to that. It's not something I'm super familiar with in my experience.
Well, I'm not worried. I'm worried. All right, I'm worried this is going to be an EPA blast for this county. Sooner or later. You can't tell me it couldn't. You can't tell me it can or won't, right?
You're right.
Okay, so how much money are we putting into this every year right now? I know you got a budget.
Yep.
So include that. But I mean, I know we've had, since I've been here, I think 3 this year?
Yes.
Okay.
So with so here's the problem that I have with the Class 3, is that this material that's coming out of the Class 3, the fluid that's coming out of Class 3, that fluid at that rate doesn't generate within a Class 3. It doesn't make scientific sense. That fluid has to be coming from somewhere. Curiosity says, yeah, let's dig up this landfill to reclaim it, to find out where this is coming from. But reality is, if we dig into this landfill to find out if this is in fact, well, first off, the material that's coming out of it, and I need to get the report back from Triad with the exact constituents and the data that we got from the last sampling that we did of that correct area. But I'm believing that is not very, very hot. And if that's the case, then there may be other options for us with dealing that will reduce the long-term cost of that within a post-closure framework. And that's where I'm focusing toward, because that's more, I don't want to say more in the reality, but it's more common practice, and it's not reinventing the wheel. Whereas when we get into that reclamation process, you're dealing with very specialized situations. I looked and heard, from the RFP, there wasn't a whole lot of folks that were actually really serious or interested in it when it was offered up the first time, so that concerns me as well. I think some of Commissioner Blair's comments about the possibility of what's going to happen when somebody gets into the project. These are things that we need to take into consideration when we're looking at that. But to give you a hard answer, a recommendation, I'm not fully prepared to do that until I look at a little bit more of the bigger picture. I don't feel like it's going to be something that's going to be, it's not a storm cloud on the horizon that's coming for us in the 2022-2023 budget year. I think that the activities that we've got going on right now with the engineers and the attention that we're putting toward this problem to try to come up with a solution for it, we'll know more by the time before this time next year rolls around about what that looks like, and then we'll have some more data through the RFP process.
So you're not going to put words in your mouth. I'll re-ask the question a different way. You don't see it currently, and maybe it's because we don't have enough data, that it's a big enough an environmental issue at this point in time.
A Class 3 landfill, just in the fact that it's a Class 3 landfill, has been deemed by TDEC to be relatively inert. I mean, that's why they allowed them to be clay lined to begin with and allowed that to continue on. So their stress and importance on the potential. Now, I'm not saying there's nothing in there that could affect the environment negatively, but the likelihood of us opening up a landfill that has asbestos shingles and reducing asbestos into a short atmosphere area, or finding something that was placed in there 30 years ago that we don't know, that could be on an EPA watch list now. There were a lot of chemicals that were used in a lot of building products and building materials back then, when that could put something that was in Class 3 or C and D category into Class 2 industrial waste category or worse. And if that were to happen, if we were to get in there into that, then those costs for remediation would absolutely skyrocket, and then we'd be going back to the position where we'd have to be looking at not having a permitted Class 3 landfill. We'd be having to talk with TDEC about how are we going to work toward getting a new landfill, going through that process to be able to accommodate the material that we have there, or other issues that could happen with the material, the way they want us to cover it, the cost that's associated with that. And my goal here is to provide the safest solution for the citizens of Rutherford County in the most cost-effective way. And if I had data that said this is completely, this is to a high likelihood is completely benign and would be a beneficial use for us to do reclamation, I would lean toward that decision. But without knowing, it's a real challenge to want to lean in that direction.
Commissioner Dodd?
You continue to reference the Class 3, which is C and D.
Yes, sir. I apologize. I got there on a minute.
As opposed to the Class 1. We have some Class 1 that's MSW.
Yes, our Class 1 landfill is the municipal solid waste landfill. That's the one that the report was written on for the post-closure.
The reclamation that we have to consider, is it the Class 3 C and D or the MSW or both.
That's
Right.
correct. That was one of the questions on the thing, yes, sir.
And Craig asked you a question, you keep going to the Class 3. So I just want to make sure we're ultimately going to decide one or the other, or both.
I'm going to the Class 3 because I do not feel there's a whole lot of benefit in opening up a landfill that's in post-closure with positive data.
Class 1.
Yes.
So, again, I'm sorry, are you finished, Phil?
Well, just, on our agenda, we're on reclamation.
Yeah.
Okay. We've got Becky's report. The one we have online cuts off before the one that I see in an email that goes through 11 points, and this one that we have goes through 6 or 7.
Oh, no.
You talking about the outline?
Yeah. And maybe hers is in here elsewhere. I'm just looking at the PowerPoint.
Her outline is on 1 through 11 is on the SharePoint.
Got it. So
The EPA thing may be cut off. I haven't looked at that yet. Is that what you're referring to?
yeah, the only one I've found thus far has been the one that only has 7 items.
Okay, look at.
I got it. I got it now. I see hers. It's downloaded separately.
Okay.
So I think we're premature. Recommendation number, we have to decide to get an engineer to start determining a few basic items as part of our RFP process, correct?
Yes.
Do we know of any engineers? Are there any engineers in this field other than Triad? I'm probably jumping too far ahead. I think we're going to need Becky's guidance as we hone this down. This draft looks really good. These 11 points look solid. It starts with define, give scope, and then we start getting something to put out there that somebody can actually bid. And I'm bumping around here, but I think our best next step is to have Becky be present to direct some of this. If we got to probably start putting some funds into some engineering consultation pretty quickly. Otherwise, Commissioner Harris's questions can't be answered unless we have some engineering data. So I'd like to know, to speed this process, do we need to get an engineer? Do we need to get Becky in here at our next meeting? Pick that first step. Does that help you, Craig?
Well, the thing, I'm confused because I know we got to get a price with what Becky's did right here. That's going to happen. We'll get something.
Yes.
You know, we think it could be anywhere between 75 to 200 million. Might be, might not be. But what I don't know, that'll take care of itself. What I don't know is what is the option? What is the second option? Like if we do what you just said and just continue to do what we're doing, put Band-Aids on it, so on and so on, what does that look like? What does that cost? You know, you said if we dig in there and all of a sudden we hit something that's very hazardous, which is possible. You see what I'm saying, Mr. Chairman? I don't know which way to go because I'm totally confused right now. Because I know we've got to do something about this. And I mean, I agree with him. If it's $200 million, I mean, there's just so much this county can do. You know, but I'm trying to see, I understand this part, but I don't understand your part. And that's what I'm confused over.
And I apologize for being, let me see if I can't clear it up. There are 2 options here. Dig it up or cover it. Cover it's post-closure. Post-closure will always require gas monitoring for at least a period of 30 years. We'll always be monitoring fluid. Where I'm at right now is we're coming up with a plan with Triad to address the most recent TDEC violations as in terms of fluid. We're working with the field office to try to come up with that plan. Jeff has a plan that he's discussed with me. He was going to have a draft to me, and I didn't receive it, so I'll present it with that idea. The goal, so in a landfill's progression, things start off, pretty lively. And as a landfill ages in post-closure, those things start to relax and subside, and you have to deal with less and less fluid, less and less gas, because the material inside of it breaks down. So the cost, much as we've seen on that first point that I had, where the Class 1's responsibility went down and the Class 3's was going up, it's proportional to the life of the landfill as the landfill goes. So what we're really weighing, the 2 points are environmental security and cost, long-term cost. Without knowing what the potential long-term costs are for reclamation activities, even in best and worst case scenarios, we can get closer with what post-closure is gonna look like by comparing it to other landfills of similar size in the state. And it's, that's something that I can have prepared for you by the time that meeting comes there too, so you can see that number as it walks down. Of course, but hopefully that cleared that up a little bit for you. I'm not trying to be ambiguous here, but there are some variables here that it's not as cut and dry as this is a number. I got a number, and I can give you a number. It's about $1.65 million to put dirt on the top of it, and then whatever is determined by TDEC for us as far as our monitoring that we have to put in there, which may be another up to $2.5 million, depending upon how stringent they want to go with what that monitoring is. So under the $5 million ballpark for that. And then it's capped, and then we're dealing with whatever leachate gets produced or whatever fluid we find, however it gets identified, and how we're managing it going forward, and the gas that happens there. I've got other concerns that I'm working on with TDEC right now when it comes to that landfill and that fluid. And the big question is, why is it generating fluid in a Class 3, landfill? And is that fluid in fact leachate? And that's where I'm at, because if it's not leachate, then we can manage it in a much more cost-effective way, and we'll find out what the state decides.
So 3 years ago, we did a bore test, and we need to do another one? Because I think it cost $50,000, and I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it was somewhere around that. But I don't think they said there was anything major, just a lot of dirt and a lot of, But is that something we need to do again?
I'd like to see the data from that bore test. I've not seen that data. If that's available, Triad will have it. Then I can review that and discuss that with Jeff, Mr. Postel, and we'll see what. And I'll be able to come up with an answer with that too.
I'm not trying to pick on you.
No, I know you.
I promise you. I'm just saying that I've been here, this is going on my 4th year, and we have talked about this every single year. Every single year it breaks, multiple times. And I'm worried, like he said about the EPA, I'm just being cautious. But in today's world, which is 100,000% litigious, this is something we have to look at and take very serious.
Yes.
So would it be beneficial to ask us to do bore testing or do another bore testing?
I don't think it would hurt.
Okay.
And I think we're going to get that if we can lock down this reclamation bullet points. That's going to be one of the outcomes of that, Commissioner Harris.
You think they'll share that information with us?
I think this will be ours. First of all, we need to get this from Triad. We've got that darn report. It's got to be.
Yeah.
But you mentioned a minute ago, Bishop, that you could present us with a cost, a I think you said a post-closure cost at the next meeting, referring to the next monthly meeting.
It'll be an estimate based on something similar. So.
And that's post-closure. That's dirt cover monitor, and then take care of a
Estimated.
declining cost of maintenance.
Well, the estimate for dirt cover is,
1.6.
and labor is 1.65.
Right, and
So
monitoring
everything that'll come
2.5.
up with there will be with the monitoring and
Okay.
post-closure.
And so you can have will it be a 30-year estimate or a yearly?
That's a good question, and I'll get with TDEC and find out what kind of data they can get me and how they can break it down, because that's where I'll get
So
that data.
next month, we'll have some kind of an estimate on post-closure cost.
And-
Cover
and-
it, close it, monitor it.
With, maintenance. Yeah.
And we've got we've got a reclamation bullet point here, the beginning of an RFP. It's an outline for an RFP. Could we choose tonight to get this RFP out? Or what's our best action with this 11-point item? Is this for us to absorb a little bit tonight and then ask Becky to present it fully and then get it out on the street? What's the best?
Our best action is to answer some of the questions that need to be answered.
On that, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and then she creates a full RFP to get out on the street for folks to put together a number. Now,
Chairman,
yeah,
can I ask a clarification again?
Certainly.
On the post-closure, talking about tons of cover?
Yes, it would be tons of trucked in, and estimated, this was 3 weeks ago estimate, and I'm not smiling because that's a
Well, my
positive thing.
understanding is perpetually, Republic has difficulty in obtaining that type, and they're a billion-dollar corporation. What's the possibility of us being able to find that much soil or dirt if they're having this much trouble?
our amount is minuscule compared to their needs, but it's still a big pricey number.
And ours would be a one event. It might be a long event, but it would be a one event and it concludes. Theirs is a daily cover. Theirs is ongoing and larger. And I think ours is a scope we could conceive of and kind of get our arms around, Wayne.
Yeah. Yep.
There's 288 acres in that landfill and estimated, 70 acres of trash, 70 to 80 acres of trash. Would we not have cover dirt somewhere on that 200 acres that we could use for cover soil?
We need about 12.4 acres covered. That's the size of the class 3 that needs it. There will be some soil that we will be able to find on site. I've already done some preliminary probing around to see what's good. Unfortunately, a lot of the soil was used in the process with the class 1 landfill as it was operating, and then there was a lot that was placed into the class 3 as well. So a lot of that land has been robbed out. There are some places, and I do expect that we'll be able to get some of. There are two types of soil, of course. We have to have the high clay content soil and then the darker topsoil. We'll be able to get some topsoil with the construction of the convenience center project, which I think is going to help immensely with getting a stockpile up with that. And we'll be able to mitigate some of the cost, but we will definitely have to haul in some of the red clay.
530, right? So can I interject? Steve, did you say how many acres? 200 and something acres?
It's 288 acres,
And you're saying only 70-some?
70 to 80 acres in landfill site. Is that not correct?
Well, that may be with both the class 3 and the class
Yes.
1,
Total.
but we don't need to do anything to the class 1. It's covered and closed.
But there should
so-
be 200 acres there that we already own.
Okay.
And it's been a long time since I was on the entire farm, but surely they didn't rob the whole place.
Okay. But the landfill we're talking about reclaiming is approximately how many acres?
It's a little more than 12 acres. A little more than 12.
Okay, 12 acres. And so here's where I'm going with this.
What
Class 3.
class 3 is 12?
Class 3.
So how many acres? 12?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and we took how many borings? 8 borings, something like that? It's less than 10, wasn't it? Okay, and we stopped because they were expensive. So think of 16, I'm sorry, dadgummit, how many acres? 12? Think of 12 acres and then popping 16 holes at random. Now, you're saying, okay, let's take some more boring samples. Okay, let's do 16 more, spend another 50, 60, probably $75,000 now. Randomly pick them. You're going to gather some more data. Still not going to get every answer. You're still not going to know exactly what's in there. You're going to get a random sampling. So how does the contract, if I'm Mike Cush, Reclamation Company, and you're, yeah, I'll uncover your landfill, I'm going to price it so high because there could be a torpedo from World War I. There could be some giant barrel of glowing stuff. What did I used to say? The monkeys, making diamonds, something with the monkeys, right? There could be all kinds of weird stuff in there that I have no idea. So I'm going to price it so dadgum high to cover my rear end. How do we know? And how do I know that's a good price? So he could either get lucky and it all be wood and paper and a little bit of trash and make out like a bandit, or he could get in there and realize, I haven't bid enough. We get asbestos, like Bishop said, I'm uncovering stuff now that 20 years ago was not on the EPA list, and now it's on the hot list. And now where do I take it? How much is it going to cost to bury it? And who's paying for that? Is that part of my contract? Is that part of the county's responsibility? And then he just says, I'm sorry, I'm done. I didn't do this right. Or you got stuff in here you didn't tell me was in here, so I'm done. That's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, you know? So I know a couple of you are contractors, you know what I'm talking about. So what else you got?
If I can
Yeah.
hit that. I agree 100%. I'm trying to think, and I'm sorry. I think it was 16. Steve, was it 16 or 32? 32 is hitting me for some reason.
Yeah, I don't think
16,
there's that many.
so it was all outside. I remember it being all outside, not a whole lot on the inside. So why don't you look at that? Because I'd imagine, I would love to see these people that want to bid on it pay for it. You know, I'd like to see that, but I don't know if they'll do that or not. Because they're going to ask us what's in the landfill. Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay. So why don't you see what Triad would cost us now to do more drilling? Because I think we need to know what's in there. I know we've seen the report 3 or 4 years ago, and most of it was on the outside of it. So there was some on the inside, but a lot of it was outside. But I'm all for going your route. I'm leaning that way, but I want to know what's in there. So we might have to, hey guys, we just might have to pay the extra 50 grand.
Right.
You don't want to, but I mean, we got to find out what's there.
Well, yeah.
Those wells that were on the outside, most of them are pre-existing. They're water monitoring wells.
Okay. So we really don't know. They didn't really get into what's in there. Okay. We paid for it. We should be able to get it. I don't think that'd be a problem. Triad should get it too, no problem.
He'll
Yeah.
get it to me.
I mean, environmentally, we need to do what needs to be done to protect the river, protect the air quality, protect public health and safety of our people, right? That's first and foremost. I'm going to say this out loud, at whatever cost, okay? But I'm not so sure, I have to be convinced that Class 3 is a hotbed and needs attention. I'm not convinced it is, for all the reasons he's listed. It's on a great clay liner. It's a Class 3. I'm not so sure it's as hot as some tend to believe it
Class
is.
3, that is the brush and all that, right?
Construction and demolition debris.
Okay. Number 1 is the one we got to worry about. Class 1.
Yeah, Class 1 is the leachate, should be the leachate generator.
How many
And it's
acres is,
closed.
how many acres is the Class 1?
Excuse me?
How many acres is the Class 1?
That's, yeah, that's a good question. I don't have
It's
that off
part
the
of
top.
the 70, Steve? Minus the 12, we think, maybe?
It's about twice the size of the Class 3.
Should we ask Triad to give us a price on more drilling?
I would suggest that we go through this process as it's outlined until we get to, so the first steps with as far as the engineer requests here from step 2, we have been doing that. I've been doing that since I've been here, as far as built survey. Rutherford County has gone out and done grid stake on that property. We did some soil analysis for thickness of cover soil on that, so that I could kind of know what numbers to come up with for post-closure dirt cover costs, and then the volume of airspace in between the top and bottom elevations. We've got that data as well from Triad. So the next step would be we probably would want to get with TDEC and take a look at our requirements if we went into the reclamation deal, and find out kind of what are we going to have to account for besides that before we start putting holes in the landfill. Because that decision may get made before we decide to go do that. That's the approach that I would take on it.
All right, Phil, you are fantastic with motions and what to do next, so I'm gonna lean on you. And you're also on budget, so do we need to do anything at this point other than, I think our takeaway here is the deliverable for next meeting, which is in August, is Bishop's going to put together an estimate of post-closure and the associated maintenance it would be for landfill babysitting for the next 30 years. Is that clear? All right.
Yes, sir.
And then as far as Becky and continuing on with the RFP, you know, she's had a $25,000 set aside money that she's into now. There's still money left on that, but we need to decide whether we need to expand that, bring in some engineering, geotechnical. Is now the right time for that? What do we need to do?
I think that the next opportunity for us to meet is our regular meeting in August?
August 2nd, 2 days before the election.
I think we're one step away from making a motion to fund engineering. I hate to say we're another darn step. I think that we need to, next meeting, have Becky and we concentrate on bullets 1 through 4 and put a budget to number 2.
Okay.
And I think number 2 is going to be the most critical item.
All right.
And the reason I'm saying we have to wait another darn month is we need Becky. She's the consultant we've hired to give us to facilitate, to document existing conditions with this, which is number 2. We got to get Bishop out of it. We got to get me and Craig and us guys. We got to have somebody with the credentials and a scope, whether it's drill a grid pattern every 50 feet so that we can own the report and give it to a contractor or give it to the RFP. So I don't know if that's a motion or August. We're meeting August 2nd.
It'll be 2 months. We don't meet in July.
Yeah, so August 2nd will be the next opportunity to. I don't even think we're prepared to answer number 1. Number 3 is all those goals have to be achieved. And then number 4, what's our end use? I don't think we can go beyond that without number 2.
Well, and I will say that the steps that are listed out here, the as-built, the topo survey, and the volume of airspace, those 3 calculations, we already have
Yeah,
those.
and I think those are, they're real, they're, quote, easy. I don't know how to convert this to a motion or to just maybe it's the agenda for next month.
Yeah,
I
okay.
just wanted to ask one more question, if I may.
Yes.
So in August, you'll bring us Triad's report as far as what they did and a pattern of how and where they drilled?
Yes, I'll bring the report from and it was 2016, so I know to ask when that was completed in 2016. I'll get that data. I'll bring the data that we've gathered since I've been in office from the most recent survey that we've done out there, and then they've been working on a plan with us for TDEC to address the ongoing issues that we've been dealing with the fluid generation.
It wasn't in 2016. I thought it was more like 2020 or 2019.
Yeah, it was-
2019?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
can we answer this question right now? Is the consensus that we are not going to touch the Class 1 currently closed MSW landfill that is, according to Bishop, TDEC says they're happy with? We're not cooking any bubbling crude out of the bottom of. Everything is copacetic. Why would we want to open that up?
I thought that's what scared us. This whole time we would
I
talk,
think it's the Class
the
3.
Class
It's the
3.
Class 3.
It's the leachate is Class 3. The wells are Class, all these ongoing funds have been the Class 3 with a mystery leachate.
Yes.
It doesn't make sense for a 3 unless there's something in there that wasn't prescribed for it.
Yes, sir.
Class 1 we're comfortable with. We're looking at a 12-acre site instead of a 70-acre site. Am I correct?
That's how I understand it.
But the closure will be for the entire landfill. Hadn't any of it been closed properly or capped, either one, has it?
The Class 1 landfill is closed and is in post-closure status. It's closed as, its permit is closed with TDEC.
Closed, but is it capped like
Yes.
it's supposed to be?
Yes,
Are
sir.
you sure?
Yep, it's capped and it's welled and it's monitored, and the Class 3 is the only one that does not have the full cap and cover.
They keep putting pressure on us to close it. We keep slow walking it.
Do you know when the Class 1 was capped?
I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but it's easy to find in the data viewer. TDEC data viewer has it as listed as closed.
Tell me what a Class 3 is.
It's all construction and demolition debris that is acceptable. Anything that's not going to generate, by definition, stuff that isn't supposed to generate leachate in its process. So you have, wood waste,
Drywall, cardboard.
Drywall, and some of the older ones, they allowed tires. I mean, there's some things that shingles can be in some of the older ones. The primary definition between a Class 1 and Class 3 is in the lining. So a Class 1 is lined with a membrane liner, and the Class 3s, the older Class 3s, were not required to have that. They were actually called Class 4 at the time. So now if it was a permitted today, it would require a liner just because of consistency and to try to keep things. They also don't require daily cover the same way that a Class 1 does, because they're not supposed to be generating odor as that process goes through. Although drywall can and does create odor in the process too. So they were always trying to cover them up as they go.
So the Class 3 is the one that's collapsing. Which one is causing us the most money to fix?
The class 3 is the one that we're pumping and treating fluid out of.
That's the one TDEC is continually on our case about with violations.
That has an open face still, that doesn't, that has what's called a beanie cap of soil on top of it, and doesn't have complete cap on the sides of it. It needs to be, in order to go into post-closure, there's some identified areas that were filled higher than than we're required, so in order to close it properly, we'll have to move that material into the areas that need to be filled, and then cap over those areas with a high clay content material, and then over the top of that with some dark soily topsoil material so that grass will grow.
And remember, as Becky, I believe, stated, that a reclamation of a landfill in Tennessee would be a first, or deadgum near the first. So maybe there's some state money or federal money out there somewhere that we could, a grant, so we could have them pay part of the tab. Becky, I'm sure would be in tune with that, or maybe some of our legislative body could help research some of that, but just a thought I wanted to get on record.
And I'd like to I would ask us to consider a motion to determine that we're only looking at the Class 3 C and D for analysis of documenting the current conditions. That
I mean, is one good?
Yes,
I mean, it's capped, we're good.
it's capped, it's
We're just
closed.
talking about 3.
And we're going with monitoring. It gets regularly watched. The data that's coming back from Triad on the monitor is saying that it's consistent and it's following the way that it should be moving. I mean, in the subsidence process on the Class 1, there may be a time when we have to put some soil on it to deal with that. Yes.
Let's say for this RFP, or at this time.
Earlier in your discussions, you said there was fear that one might slide into another one, and you were referring to both of our landfills. I'm sure if we come in and reclaim the C and D part, this is going to expose all of one side of the other landfill.
That's a valid concern that should be addressed by an engineer. I wouldn't.
You don't need an engineer to understand that that's going to open that up. If you dig one mountain away and it's against each other, the whole side is going to be exposed. I think if we consider getting anybody to come and answer our RFP, maybe somebody might, it would be for the whole thing or nothing. And if we could get somebody to reply, I would really like to hear their answers to all the real good questions y'all have asked tonight, because they would most likely know from experience of reclamation of a landfill. They would actually have the experience. They would know what to expect, possibly what you would find that you had no idea. And they might tell you to leave it alone.
So so what I'm going to make a motion that we concentrate on the Class 3, and at our next meeting have Becky, we gather enough information to put some budget towards confirming the conditions of the Class 3, whether that's boreholes, including at the border between the two. Maybe we can find the border between the two and determine there's some safety factor. And our goal may be, Steve, to find enough information to confirm we need to cap it and close it and get out of there. But so the first step is, my motion is to concentrate on 3. And at the next meeting, we will have a goal to determine a budget to confirm the existing conditions of Class 3.
My concern with that, if you, of course, just be concerned about the Class 3, and we'll have more discussion on it. But if you go in there and do one and leave that old landfill there, in 10 years from now, if our neighbors have some major issue, it'll cost us millions of dollars to prove it's not our landfill, it's theirs.
Could my motion give us enough information to take the first step find the current conditions of the C and D, which may lead us to expanding our search into the Class 1.
Do you think we could do
Or do you want to do both?
Do both, do 3 and then have a price on 1? Because, I mean, we could do price on both. Because I agree with him. I think when you take 3 down, 1's going to collapse. So I'm thinking, why would you consider this reclamation be broke up into 2 parts, 1 and 3?
Or do you just?
No, I'm for that, but then I would say I want to provide an authoritative body of evidence of what's there. And if I need to expand my motion to do 1 and 2 and have them categorized, but budget enough to core drill, pothole, get reports in front of this body of what's actually there. We can't do anything till we know what's there, then get some comfort level of where to start and stop.
I'll second, because we need some information that we don't presently have to make further decisions.
And
Go ahead.
so if that's duly motioned and seconded, if you know what the motion is.
And a spearhead, yeah. We at least need an engineering study of the junction between 1 and 3.
Right, so some of those critical cores could be at the junction, and we may find that I'm asking we open that can of worms with Triad or something, yeah. Becky needs to help us get a budget to hire a certified consultant to give us a scope of testing to determine what's there.
Would you not like to see the results of the core drilling we have already done first?
Absolutely. We expect that next month. And I also need somebody to, at next month, my motion is that we be provided a budget so that we can approve a professional certified consultant to start to give us a scope of testing.
Okay.
I'm sorry, y'all, I'm struggling to put this in.
Okay, let's take a breath. Let's go back to the motion on the floor, which was seconded. Can you sort of kind of repeat that to the best of your ability so Rachel can jot that down?
I want Becky to provide us with a scope of study to determine the existing conditions of the Class 1 and Class 3.
Or the Class 3?
We're going to have to, my motion is we go into the Class 1 to a degree to at least determine where their buffer is. So I'm asking, my motion is that Becky provide us with a scope of study to determine the existing conditions of the Class 3 and confirm its border with the Class 1.
And, I'm sorry, and confirm?
Confirm its border with the Class 1.
Okay.
But I don't know what the heck, where this 3 is.
Yeah. So if, basically, you go out and, like a survey stake, and say, this is 1 and this is 3. And then in construction, you would say, okay, how do we take 1 down without 3 being sacrificed?
And we may not, then we've got to go further into 1. But
Okay. Yeah, all right. Is that what you seconded, Wayne? Okay. Does everybody clearly understand? So let's vote on that motion before we get a headache. All those in favor of that motion signify aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Now, are you coming up with a second motion in terms of, or are we going to wait till we get that information before we go into a financial? Okay, I see the motion. All right, okay. All right. What else?
That's all I have.
That's enough, Bishop. You're off the clock. All right, you guys have a meeting, Budget has a meeting at 5:30, right? When do you want me to end this meeting? Because I got 1, 2, 3 of you in here, right? Or two, well, P's not here, too. I got 2 of you in that meeting. You need 15 more minutes, 20 more minutes? Can they come in here and do that while we're talking? Okay. Okay, they won't bother us. Okay, all right.
Hey, Mike, just for clarification, could you read the motion that we just voted on?
For Becky, Ms. Caldwell to provide a scope of study to determine the existing conditions of our Class 3 landfill and to confirm the border of our Class 1.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that Michael Clausen back there? Michael, you weren't here for the first part. Did you hear all the patting on the back and stuff we were giving you? You did. Okay, well, good. You came at the right time then. A couple of items left were discussion on continuous waste management and Pratt Industries. We can skip the construction updates on the convenience centers and other business. I do have something in other business. Let's talk about Pratt Industries really quickly. They sent an agreement. Mayor, if you want to, because that's fresh on your mind. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take just a few moments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. 2 weeks ago on Friday, there was a Zoom call with Michael Skipper and all the mayor's caucus of 32 mayors in Middle Tennessee through GNRC, letting us know that there was a company by the name of Continuous, spelt with 2 U's, would be giving a presentation of their what they call Everboard. It's a roofing panel that they're making around the country, and they're currently in contract with, have an exclusive contract with Target stores, and they're putting roofing panels made out of plastic, not plastic bottles, but hard to recycle plastics like a Tide bottle, etc., cardboard and mixed paper. They're putting these insulation panels in. They said that they are wholly owned by Waste Management. It's a pretty impressive panel that they're putting on these roofs. They're putting one on the Target in Spring Hill, Tennessee, and one in Knoxville, Tennessee at the Targets there. They're doing it all over the country. They wanted to locate a facility here and ask all the mayors in Middle Tennessee, did you have any property? They were actually looking at 25 to 50 acres. I threw out during the conversation we had 20 at Florence Road. So they flew in, we met, Chairman and I met with them last week. They actually went down and looked at it, and then they went on to Nashville to look at the other facilities that they had. They probably have about 75 employees by making these boards, but they would separate out all the trash on the tipping floor and through their MRF, and then take the trash onto their facility at Waste Management, probably at Cedar Crest down in Lewisburg or some other location that they have. Is there a video?
Yeah, there's like
Okay.
2 minutes ready to go.
2-minute video, show you what they're looking at.
Becky? Ted, come it.
What's that?
I called her Becky again.
How do you turn 400,000 pounds of hard-to-recycle material into the roof of a warehouse or a big box store? Continuous is a company that takes plastics and paper that can't usually be recycled and turns it into super high-performance roofing material. Here's how they do it. This is called Everboard, and it's made from paper and plastic that can't typically be recycled. Materials like food packaging, shopping bags, coffee cups, bubble wrap, and other shipping materials. Let's see how we get from this to this. Waste is diverted to a continuous facility where tens of thousands of pounds of tough-to-recycle plastics and paper are processed every day. The materials are separated, sorted, and conditioned. Now, as the materials move through the facility, magnets remove all the metals so it can be recycled too, while the papers and plastics are extracted, separated, and dried. Paper and plastics get shredded. Shredded up plastic and paper is put through the continuous process to create a mat of raw materials using a special recipe. Once salt compressed and finished, boom, Everboard. This facility produces 7 million square feet of Everboard per year. The new continuous facility coming in 2024 will produce over 150 billion square feet of Everboard. That's around 2,300 grocery store roofs. That's amazing. So what makes Everboard so great? It's a high-performance product that helps extend the life of a roof by protecting it from weather including hail and strong winds. Plus, it's much easier and less expensive to install. For every 1,000 square feet of Everboard, that keeps 800 pounds of plastic and 1,200 pounds of paper from going to a landfill. Continuous reduces the amount of waste that goes to a landfill by 30%. By 2050, as much as 12 billion tons of trash will end up in a landfill. But we can make a difference. WM and Continuous are working together to give hard-to-recycle materials a second life. Let's keep working for a sustainable tomorrow.
So, for the last 4 years, we've often said in these meetings that if there was a silver bullet out there, that either Waste Management or Republic would own it. Waste Management owns this. They have an end product. We've gone and we've looked at recycling in different locations. We've looked at mulching in Sevierville. We've looked at pellets. They used to be in the pellet business and got out of it because there's no end product for the pellets, and they've gotten into this, and I think they've hit on something. Unfortunately, when we talked to them, they did call back day before yesterday and said they looked at all the sites in Nashville. They had one that was level, 50 to 100 acres, but it was too expensive. They liked our site. However, they don't want to get into politics, and they said they would have to combine with the city. That being said, to our Florence facility with the mulching facility with the city, I believe, is not interested at this point. I gave the information and the maps of our facility in Florence. Chairman Cush had a lunch yesterday with the city, and they said they're really not interested in that and would not allow, even with the 20 acres, for us to tap onto the sewer, which is city sewer that is on our property coming on Florence Road, but we would have to request annexation into the city and then tap on to the sewer, and they are not allowing anybody outside themselves to tap on, and they are letting us do our public health and safety buildings in 2 of our locations, but in this case, they would not allow us to do that. So in the meantime, after we met with them, the first on the Zoom call, Pratt Recycling, we've gone through the process the last 4 years. We did the RFIs, the RFPs, and we came up, I think Pratt was our #1 choice, and then we were looking at Rockwood as #2 to take our C&D, and then continue to use Republic and BFI for our trash. If you recall, Pratt is not in the trash business. They are in the recycling business. They got wind that we were talking to Waste Away or Continuous, and so they sent forward a copy of a contract that they are interested in signing with us. Steve, you mind passing these on? This has all just occurred in the last 2 weeks.
Like a contract for what?
I'm sorry?
Contract for the piece of property?
Contract with Pratt and with us. They're interested in the 20 acres that we have. And there again, I talked to the city today. They're still not, we'd have to go through that process of getting annexed and then requesting, and they wouldn't let us tap onto the sewer. But we have talked to Folly and with the state. All they really need is about 5 to 8 acres to build their facility. And also, we could put the new hybrid step system on the property, so we wouldn't need to have the need to tap onto the sewer. All they're looking at right now, we talked to Pratt, gentleman's name is, if you remember, Kurt Schmitz. He's the regional manager for the Southeast. He said they're looking at about 14 employees when they first get started and will grow. However, they don't need any water or sewer in their process except for bathrooms. They don't have a large trunk line of water that they would need for that process. If you recall, when they presented this book to us back in, I believe that was February of 21, when we did the RFIs, they want to go into a P3 with the county, which means that at the end of the year, if there are profits from selling their recyclables, then they would split that. We would put up the land. They want to build a $9 million facility on our property. And so, Mr. Chairman, what you have before you is an offer from Pratt Recycling to move forward. I think between now and your next meeting, any questions could be asked. We'll get this over to legal and see if committee and the commission would like to move forward with Pratt. I really like the thing with the continuous. They did say, when I told them that it didn't look like it would work out after your meeting yesterday at lunch, when I talked to the continuous, they said that they were going to go and look at the facility, the acreage on Butler Drive that the city has. They did not get a chance to look at that. So they could possibly build a facility there. Both these companies are coming, with or without us. They're coming because they realize the growth here in Middle Tennessee. Both these companies are, one's in the trash business, one is not, but both are in the recycling business, and they see the need to start recycling these products.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go back on something he brought up. So you had a meeting with Murfreesboro concerning continuous?
Yes.
Okay, and they said they're not interested?
No, the city is interested in continuous. Where the city is not interested is using their mulch facility which is next door to our land on Sanger Road, Florence Road area. They do not want to join forces on that location. They're not going to put anything on that location.
Are they suggesting they might look at other locations?
Yeah, they're trying.
They have a lot of
They're trying
land?
to steer continuous to other locations.
Okay, so it's still in talks.
Yes, yes. And continuous, they're Everboard. They have 12 months worth of backlog of orders already. And then the only part one of the parts that I do not like or wish was better was they only have about a 40% diversion rate. So 60% still needs to be landfilled, which they would take, it's their responsibility to take, waste management to take somewhere else.
Now, going back to Pratt, it's been some time, you'll have to dust your book off, but they are also interested in doing transportation services and relieving Bishop and his department. They'll go by, they'll bring in their trucks, and they'll pick up all of our recyclables at all 14 of our convenience centers and take it to their facility. So that would give us more time to take care of our other trash issues. They would just pick up the recyclables for us and give us, we stay at maintain our current level of, and get it done faster and quicker turnaround.
Anything else would have to be delivered to Pratt? Curbside, any curbside pickup, anything like that has to be delivered to Pratt.
And they would pick ours up. Would they weigh it and charge us $65 a ton? Is that too? Don't let me get us in the weeds.
Commissioner, it's been some time since I've looked at this.
Oh, they weigh it at their
They weigh it and
facility?
charge us 60. There's a processing fee of $65 per short ton delivered to Pratt.
Yes, sir.
Or would they charge us for the haul? I'm just curious.
If it's
Every ton tipped on their property, they get paid $65. I get it. I get that, but
Yeah.
if I'm reading that right?
I think this gives us some time to really digest this between now and the August meeting.
Yeah. By all means, there's no way we're going to take any action on this, but
And there's something about if we send less than a ton, we get nothing.
Yeah.
They don't pay us anything. Yeah, there's a lot to go through.
Yeah, one of the things, Mayor, you can put on your list that contract I can't find is if we deliver materials and that material has a list of hazardous material.
I don't know, Commissioner. I think that if they're going to pick up all of our convenience center just recyclables, and as we're redoing our convenience centers, it gives Bishop and his team the opportunity to really start educating our folks with good signage and what we're going to accept, what we're not going to accept, et cetera, as we start the recycling process and changing that culture here in Rutherford County.
Chairman, the way I read that item on that contract is we will not bring any hazardous material. If they find it, it's ours to take back home with us.
I'd like to compare this to the brochure, the book.
When we were talking with Pratt, their goal is to make a 40% dent into our carbon footprint. So with continuous, you said 60%.
It's
also about 40.
It's also 40.
It's also about 40.
Okay, so is there crossover here? So it's 40 and 40 or 40 and 20?
It's basically 40-40. Continuous gets better as they grow. And let me talk about the word grow. Both of these would need out-of-county material to make their business profitable.
But the bottom line is the potential of affecting our footprint by 80%. Is that correct?
Say that one more time.
Our waste stream, impacting our waste stream by 80%.
I get what you're saying. They'll be
Well, I
taking
wondered if there's a crossover here.
Yeah, Continuous will be taking some of the same products that Pratt will be.
Yeah, we wouldn't need both.
Yeah.
If we were doing business with Continuous, we wouldn't need Pratt.
Right now, we're sending, Steve, how many tons are we sending out of Rutherford County to Pratt facility in Nashville right now? 1,000 tons per year. Is that per year? Per month. 1,000 tons of recyclables are going out of Rutherford County to their Pratt facility, but they want a new facility here. This is if you remember the pictures inside the book that they gave you, it's a completely enclosed facility. The trucks would drive in, dump the recyclables, go back out the garage door. There's no smell, there's no odor, because it's not trash, it's recyclables. All you've got is truck traffic, which would be on I-40 Murfreesboro Road.
But if Continuous is owned by Waste Management,
That's
then
correct.
there could be an opportunity where we could do the 40% with Continuous and the 60% with Waste Management.
That's correct. That's correct. But keep in mind, you would still need to take other out-of-county trash. It would just be at a different location.
Not trash, recyclables.
Okay,
Right.
I understood it as,
Well, they'll bring.
they would take
no,
everything and sort it.
They'll sort it and then pick it back up and put it back in a truck of
Oh, yeah.
what they don't sort out. Now, that's continuous. Pratt is no trash.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is correct. That is correct.
Yeah, they plainly corrected me when they were here. They were not in the trash
Yeah.
business. Y'all had the calls and all. Was there any hint of where they might else locate other than at our 20 acres?
What, which one? Pratt wants
Either one.
Pratt wants our 20 acres, because all they need is about 8. Okay, they would love to do that and put a rail in. They're going to ship it off to their big facility down in Conyers, Georgia. Put a spur next to the railroad and take it out of the county, okay? They have end products for everything, glass, plastic. They make carpet out of their plastic water bottles, et cetera. Now, Continuous, they are probably going to go back, based on the conversation yesterday, and talk to the city. They want to go look at the property that I think that the city has out on Butler Drive. But they've turned down all the locations in Nashville that they looked at, and no other counties out of the 32 came up with any property that would be interested, because they're looking at being close to the interstate. Cannon County doesn't have anything close, right?
They want to be close to, they don't necessarily need to be close to a rail. They need to be close to interstate. They need at least 20-some acres that's flat and accessible. They looked at Davidson County, and they found the perfect spot, but Davidson County wants to sell it to them. They want a partnership where we would give land or make it affordable. So they're talking again with the city on their property. We don't have any other property other than Sanger Road to show, but they claim they're coming to Middle Tennessee area regardless. So if we would do business with them outside the county, that means we would have to truck our material to that site, to their transfer station, which we could do. It just means that Bishop next year is going to ask for a whole bunch more trucks and drivers, because, you know, whatever time, with the 45 minutes he's spending on the hill waiting in line, he's going to spend an hour and 15 minutes on I-24 waiting in traffic to get somewhere. So he's going to need more trucks.
I would really like to see the numbers on that, you know, if we ever got that far. My fear, you know, this committee has studied trash day in, day out, and one of our ultimate goals was to try to stop other trash from coming into this county. And the last thing we need to do is start a separate trash business away from what we've already got. We don't need to, for sure.
It depends on whether we want to try and make some revenue, or we're all going to have a different opinion on how we want to address that.
I want to clarify, if Continuous gets a contract on a piece of land in a partnership with the city of Murfreesboro out at Butler, for instance,
Take them 2 years.
would Pratt walk away? Did I hear somebody say they can't, we don't have enough for both?
What I said was, if we did a deal with Continuous, I don't see why we would need to also do a deal with Pratt, because they're both taking cardboard.
But they're still coming.
If the city did a deal with Continuous, would there be any need for us to do a deal with Pratt?
If the city's doing a deal.
If the city and Continuous work out a triple P on a city property or Butler Drive, would that resolve our problem? We just looking for somebody to take single stream recycling and do something with it.
Well, we could, it depends on what they want to charge us. What, if they're doing a partnership with the city, it depends on, for Bishop to take our recyclables to Continuous, what are they going to charge us? Whereas if we're doing a partnership with Pratt, and we split the profits at year end, we put a property that we already own, then there's not a charge. So yes, we continue doing ours.
Final question. When I saw that video, Continuous is a single stream sorted recycling. It's not solid waste. It's not municipal solid waste. Am I correct?
They bring everything into a dirty MRF. They sort it.
That said,
They take what?
MSW? MSW?
Yes, They take what they want, move it to the next building, which is Everboard, and then they make the board. What's left, they ship off to a landfill.
Scoop back up,
Scoop back up, take it to a landfill.
put it in another truck and take it away. But the trash is still coming to that location, okay? Whereas Pratt, there's no trash. It's all recyclables.
Yeah, it'd be less traffic. Pratt, there's really no traffic other than what we're generating to take to Pratt. Other than that, it gets on the rail and goes to their facilities. We're not incurring more traffic or trash.
I thought Pratt
No,
would,
not with Pratt.
Pratt would not need more volume.
It's recyclables and board, which they turn around and ship out right away.
There's no way they could build a facility here just for our recyclables. He stood right here and said they would have to take out of county recyclables.
Recyclables and
Recyclables,
trash,
no trash.
which they handle at their, let's call it a transfer station or building, and then it goes out on rail back to where they will resell it or use it in their cardboard facilities
How does it get to that building?
by rail or by truck.
By truck,
Yeah.
traffic.
Traffic, yeah, but not trash. Not trash. All right, we're getting close on time. Really quickly, I put on your table a two-page document. One is a Excel spreadsheet and one is a little explanation. Your homework for Monday, and I'm going to have Rachel send this out to all the commissioners and have them rate what they think is important to them and their constituents in their districts. This talks about a lot of things we've talked about tonight. What's important to you and your constituents? Is it free trash? Is it spending a little money a month to take it, process it somewhere out of county, in county? Do we want to be green? Do we want to keep the health, safety, and welfare of our constituents high on the list? It's a ranking system. It's pretty self-explanatory once you get into it. There's no wrong or right answer, okay? It's just something that I want to put together. We'll get an aggregate, and then we'll really get a feel where this committee is. And what it's going to help us do is decide, based on this aggregate, okay, well, if being green is not that important, or if it's super important, we will focus on those technologies where most of us are heavily, where we think our constituents are heavily interested, all right? If it's taking trash and turning it into something good versus taking it and dumping it into somebody else's landfill, then we'll focus on those kind of technologies. Catch my drift? No, you can be anonymous. I don't care. I'm just trying to get I'm trying to be mathematical about going to the next step. All right? Now, yeah, you can be anonymous. I don't care. All right. Any questions? Budget, you have 2 minutes to relax before you.
So we bring here to the office.
You can bring it Monday. Don't sign it. Give it to me. Whatever you want to do. But I'm also
Okay.
going to have Rachel send out 21
Okay.
of them to everybody. All right. Thanks, everybody.